Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Tuesday, getting this done early in the day today. We have a long day ahead with stuff going on work-wise, but no matter. We have arcing line of showers and thunderstorms this morning across the Great Lakes, back through parts of the northern plains, and this is going to be where the severe weather outbreak is going to take place today from the northern plains on southward into Texas. When we look at the Storm Prediction Center's view in just a second, I also want to point out that we do have precipitation coming into the west, rain and some snow in the mountains, and all of this will be spreading up into the Northern Rockies. But here's the Storm Prediction Center's view today of severe weather risk. It shows a large area of enhanced risk from North Texas through Oklahoma, on up through central Kansas into southeastern Nebraska and parts of western Iowa, and this larger area of slight and marginal risk. So there's going to be a fairly significant outbreak of severe thunderstorms later today. So we're going to pay attention to that. And you notice the general area of thunderstorms is in the west. There's very little going on from the respect for thunderstorms with respect to thunderstorms in the east, although there is a risk of them in central and south Florida, where, by the way, it's been exceptionally dry, so any rain is definitely welcome. There was a few days last week where the fire danger in Florida was at critical levels, so the thunderstorm activity may be a good thing, although you don't want the lightning to necessarily a lightning hit to then set off a fire somewhere. So let's see how it plays out. Let me just check back on the radar. At least at the moment, there is nothing going on with respect to showers down in central and south Florida. So when we look at the satellite loop this morning, we can see this storm continues to progress to the east. So that has finally opened the door for the warm air to come in. Now, what's going to happen today is you see the clouds that are over the Great Lakes. We're getting some blow-off cloud cover from the thunderstorms that we showed you on the radar, and much of that is going to move southeastward. So I suspect that we'll probably see some clouds mixing in with the sunshine that's around the northeast this morning, down into the areas of the mid-Atlantic states. I don't think there'll be any showers with this. It'll just be the blow-off high clouds. So that'll cut back on a little bit of the sunshine, but it won't stop temperatures from climbing well up into the 70s to around 80. And one of the things that's happening is that, and it's so typical this time of year with the very strong May sun, is that the warm-ups, when they come, tend to come faster and probably go a little bit more than models can handle. So we may see some 90-degree readings tomorrow, Wednesday, rather than wait for Thursday. So I kind of tacked on a couple of degrees to my forecast, being that I'm thinking there will be places that'll hit 80 today. So there's nothing to stop it from getting to the middle and upper 80s, or maybe even some 90-degree temperatures on Wednesday in some areas away from the coast. And on Thursday, there'll be widespread upper 80s and low 90s. And even Friday, we may hold on to this heat in the east for a little while longer. Now, in the west, you can see the thunderstorms that are moving up and showers moving up through the Dakotas and Minnesota. But here's that part of that weather system that's coming into the Pacific Northwest now, sweeping across Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and there's more moisture offshore. So let's take a look at where this is all going. And I want to start with the long range on the upper air, because while we are in a ridge position, and we saw this the last couple of days, we mentioned that there may be an attempt for blocking to return. Now, let me just make it clear. I've said this already a couple of times, but apparently a few people that have been watching my videos have missed this particular point. With a block that I see developing is not going to be anything in terms of strength of what the last one was. So in terms of how it impacts temperatures in the east, I'm thinking that it brings it back down to average, maybe a little bit below. But this last blocking stretch, we saw days with temperatures running 10, 15 degrees below normal. I don't know that we're going to, I doubt that we'll see anything that extreme unless we wind up with some kind of low to our south and an ocean wind. So, but that's something I can't resolve at this point. I can only speak in generalities. But you can see what's going on here at for today and through Thursday, of course, where we got this ridge that's building in the east and the very deep active trough that's in the west with several weather systems moving along it. The ocean storm that we're seeing now moves east of Newfoundland, and we have a ridge out in the Atlantic that's building up toward Greenland. So let's watch and see what happens with all this as we go forward. So the ridge is going to get flattened out a little bit on Friday once a cold front moves through. And that front, by the way, is taking longer to get here. So it looks like it may not come through here till Friday afternoon. Notice that up near Greenland and Iceland, you're starting to get higher than normal pressures. And indeed, when we look at Saturday night, we do have the beginnings of a blocking high here. But again, it's not nearly as strong. So because of that, you still have basically a ridge position in the east, and you have a trough that's south of Newfoundland. I'm sorry, a low that's sitting over Newfoundland with the extending trough southward, and then these weather systems moving along a ridge that's trying to build back up into the west. So initially, the block really doesn't change too much. But as we move through time and go into next week, you can see the upper high here just kind of flexing a little bit. So it gradually evolves where the trough in the east, the ridge in the east disappears, and it's replaced by very broad troughing. In fact, that block actually strengthens quite a bit next week as we move through. Now we're into Wednesday night, May 25th, and you've got that blocking high sitting up there, so you can see how it displaces the trough, the jet stream further south than it otherwise would be. And we kind of have the signature we had last week, except it's just weaker. Okay, you don't have this wrapped up storm in the Azores, but you do have something there. So what we're going to have to pay attention to is whether this all comes to some sort of grinding halt. But you can see over time that there's still this tendency, at least on the GFS model, for higher than normal pressures and warmer air in the North Atlantic, which is going to probably lock in some kind of upper low in southeastern Canada. So we do have a rather cool looking flow here going into the Memorial Day weekend. We'll see if it holds. But it seems to me that sometimes when you get these blocking signatures, when they do finally show, we look for them. Sometimes they wind up happening, sometimes they don't. But it would have seemed to me that when we saw it to the magnitude that we saw it last week, that it was going to try to come back, and I kind of thought that would be the case. But it appears that we're going to be going back into a bit of a blocking signature, but again, not as extreme as what we had. So let's real quick go through what this means in terms of the day-to-day weather, and we're going to do it all together today instead of rather breaking it down into regions. So let's back it up. All right, so here we go in the east. So we know there's going to be a lot of heat in the east, and that's a given. And we have a storm that's developing in Nebraska. Notice snows from the northern down into the central Rockies with some rain as well. Very chilly out in the west. Low pressure heads towards the Great Lakes. Still very warm in the east. Now here's where we get this front that comes through on Friday with maybe a shower or thunderstorm with that. But this high to the north is going to bring a relatively chilly onshore flow for the weekend. I think we could be back just in the 60s, depending on how much cloud cover we have for daytime highs. And then low pressure runs to the lake, so there'll be another one of these warm front, cold front scenarios as we move into early next week. Looks like the bigger issue for the weekend may wind up being clouds more than showers, and that showers and storms will hold off until this weather front approaches. And in the meantime, let me just go backwards again. I want to show you that from the system that's coming out on Thursday out of the Rockies, we are going to see some sort of severe weather outbreak, I think, from North Texas through Oklahoma and into Missouri. The GFS does show that quite well, and then that system winds up going to the east. So very, very, relatively active pattern here from the standpoint of severe weather. Out in the west, still getting the chances for some precip into the middle of next week, but I'm thinking that if this blocking signature is going to be correct in the east, that we're probably going to have the weather calm down a bit in the western part of the U.S. as we go into the Memorial Day weekend, while in the east, we're going to have to wonder whether there might be some chances for some rain or showers over that weekend, depending on how the upper low sets up. So rather interesting times. I don't see anything extreme here, and I don't see at this point a repeat of what we had this weekend with this low pressure that moved up the East Coast in a day where temperatures stayed in the upper 40s and low 50s. It's amazing how we go from that extreme and now we're going to 90. But that has actually been the mark of this entire year so far, to have these very, very sharp volatile flips in both directions, where we had temperatures up in the 60s, followed by a blizzard the next day at one point back during the winter. So, these things do happen, and that, again, the signature is set early. So until that particular part of the pattern breaks down, my guess is that, this is what we're going to see going forward. Have a great day, everybody. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, by all means, please do. It's for free. Just hit the little red subscribe button on the channel page, and you'll get notifications every time new videos come up, which is usually once a day, although sometimes I do 2 or 3, but most of the time it's just 1. Have a great day.